Hey guys, I'm Chad Hoover, and today I'm going to talk to you about the only 3 things that you need to get started kayak fishing. All right, so listen, there's a lot of debates online about like what you need to get started kayak fishing. There's a lot of YouTubers out there like myself that are trying to tell you about the things that you need. Okay, need is a relative term. Okay, we all have cars with power steering. You don't need it. You could just fight the steering wheel. We all have most of us have cars with air conditioning. You don't need it. You could just roll the windows down. We've mostly got things that are convenience, right? We got a key fob to unlock our door so we don't have to stick the key in the hole. So the whole need thing is always subjective, and it's always hilarious to me when people say dumb stuff like, oh, why don't you just buy a boat? Well, if I wanted a boat, I'd buy a boat. So that's why that little thing just kind of digs and irritates you. You don't pull up next to a dude on a motorcycle at a red light and roll the window down and go, why don't you just buy a car? But people still do that with kayak fishing. But what it says to me is there's a lot of people in the comment section that don't know our sport, and there's a lot of people in the comment section that don't know our community. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that during the process of narrowing down the 3 things that you need. Actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to flip that. I'm going to give you the 3 things that you really need to get started kayak fishing, and then I'm going to talk about 2 things that I think are really nice to have, and then I'm going to say here's how I think you should go about deciding what stuff to add or not add. In fact, I got a couple text messages this morning from close friends of mine. Hey, I got a brand new kayak. I'm thinking about rigging it out. What do I need to do? And again, need is a relative term. I'm going to tell you exactly what I told them. First and foremost, the only thing you need to go kayak fishing is a kayak, some form of paddle, and some form of PFD, okay? And I'll tell you, there's a great video out there by the Bearded Dad, by Jay from the Bearded Dad Fishing, talking about the 10 things you don't need to get started kayak fishing. There's one in there in particular that I really disagree with him on, but I'll link up his video in the description box below, and that is that he says you don't need a quality paddle. If you're just getting into kayak fishing, his thing is you're probably going to end up with a pedal drive, or you're probably going to end up with a motor at some point. Well, that's cool, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to paddle for a good little while. And I highly recommend, if you get into kayak fishing, that you get into it with a paddle kayak first, because one, it's going to be the cheapest and most affordable. It's going to be the most comfortable boat at the price point if you're looking for a price point boat. And so spending a little bit more money on your paddle is going to allow you to have a better experience instead of, paddling around with this dumbbell or this barbell heavy thing all day, which makes your shoulders hurt, your obliques hurt, your neck hurt, ultimately your head hurt. So what I highly recommend is that you grab some brand of paddle. I'm a big fan of Bend and Branches that has some type of adjustable ferrule, and then something in the either fiberglass or carbon shaft and fiberglass or carbon blade. This is a fiberglass and carbon. This is a carbon on carbon, and I'm kind of spoiled, but I also like to paddle. I do the rivers quite a bit, and on a river, by and large, you're going to do a lot more paddling. So invest in a quality paddle up front instead of buying that $20, $50, $80, and then $100 paddle. I'd start somewhere in the $100 to $125 range. Otherwise, you're basically spending that $20, $50, $70 to ultimately end up with a $100, $150, $200 paddle anyway. So now you're spending $200 on a $100 paddle. So spend a little bit more money on your paddle up front, especially if you're not jumping directly to a pedal drive or a motorized kayak. I would also say that if you're thinking about getting into pedal drives, get a premium pedal drive or get a low price budget non-pedal drive kayak and add a motor to it. I would rather have a lower quality kayak, if you will, or lower price, not quality, with a motor on it than a cheap pedal drive. Most of the cheap pedal drive kayaks I've seen are really loud, they're really clunky. To get them cheap, they got to skimp on things like the seat. And if you remember my acronym SCRAPE, the number 2 thing that I think you should consider in fishing kayaks is stability and comfort, okay? And if comfort is sacrificed, what are you doing, right? Because up front, you're going to be miserable out there on the water for the sake of having a pedal drive that you're going to use not 100% of the time that you're fishing. So I would even go with like a cheap trolling motor mounted to the back of your boat with like a piece of 2x4 into a couple of flush mounts over buying a cheap pedal drive. If I was going to buy a pedal drive kayak, that would be the one kayak that I'd save and splurge on a little bit more. The next thing is a PFD. And I almost think you should buy your stuff or consider your stuff and budget for these things in this order. Buy a quality paddle, buy a quality PFD, because if you upgrade your kayak or if you move to the next kayak, you can always take those things with you. All the stuff that you slap onto your kayak, for the most part, when you try to sell it, you're not getting that money back out of the kayak. You're really not. When you see these package deals, you're selling the kayak for as much as you get for it, and you're pretty much giving away the stuff that you've mounted to it. And so, to me, a quality PFD, because I do feel like it's the most important piece of gear on your boat. It can save your life. And so therefore, buy something that's comfortable, buy something that's functional. Now I'm gonna throw a little plug into the middle of this video to get you guys to comment on it. I just picked up this Blue Storm Kinetic. Literally just yesterday got this, I think it's pronounced Kamiya from Mustang. Got this in the mail yesterday. And these are all things I bought. These are not being sent to me by the company for review. I'm going through this process of evaluating PFDs for the sake of building the perfect kayak fishing PFD. But I got this PFD here. I think it's called the Topwater. Yeah, it's called the Topwater from Mustang. So ordered 2 from Mustang. I got this one from Blue Storm. I got another one on order from Blue Storm. And then I've obviously covered the NRS Chinook. I still have a couple of them that I'm going to review. And the one I've been wearing the most is this Pisces from Stolquist. So comment in the comment section below exactly what questions you would like answered in my upcoming kayak fishing PFD in-depth review, in-depth overview video. All right, so now back to the 3 things you need to get into kayak fishing. You need a fishing kayak, you need a paddle, and you need a PFD. The things you're going to look for in a PFD are comfort, functionality, and design. Okay, is it designed specifically for fishing? Does it have pockets? Does it have lanyards? Does it have things that accommodate fishing? Do you want a full back because you have a really high back seat, or do you want a half back because you have a low to medium size seat? So again, the things you want to think about when buying your PFD is comfort, function, and design. Then for your paddle, the things you want to think about are obviously you're going to think about price, but you want stiffness, because if a paddle's not stiff and it flexes, it's probably going to flex so many times before it ultimately breaks. It's going to flutter in the water, it's not going to be efficient, and then weight. So for me, it's worth a little bit extra money to invest in having that quality paddle. And even when you have a pedal drive and a motor, I still spend a lot of time with the paddle in my hand. And so I firmly believe in investing a little bit more in the paddle. Again, go watch Jay from Bearded Dad's video about the 10 things you don't really need. In that video, he's going to tell you to get a $20 paddle. I couldn't disagree more. And again, it's not a sponsorship thing. I just firmly believe that as kayak anglers, whether you start that way or whether you end up that way, you're going to want to paddle, and you're going to want to have the ability to paddle. And a heavy paddle, it will kick your butt over the course of a fishing day. All right. So the last thing, and definitely not the least thing that you need to get into kayak fishing, is the kayak. I think the best value in the industry is still the Bonafide RS-117. That's 11 foot 7 inches. The RS stands for Rise Series, which means getting started and rising up through the ranks. And so now I want to address kind of the last thing that I really want you to think about when you get into kayak fishing, because you're going to see a lot of this banter on social media. You're going to see a lot of it here on YouTube or Facebook or wherever you're watching this. Oh, kayak fishing is getting too expensive. Well, here's where that argument is kind of silly, okay? I'm standing next to the most advanced fishing kayak I've ever owned. This is the Bonafide PWR 129. Absolutely love this boat. It is a boat that I motorize, but it is a boat that I can still paddle. It is a boat that I can accessorize, but it is a boat that's still not, overdone for me. A lot of people comment on my son Austin's video, think he's got too much crap on there, but when you look at the way that the system's set up from the cockpit view, there's a place for everything and everything in its place. And so now I want to get into and address the issue of kayak expense, okay? You're going to see guys like me who are gearheads and who are design junkies and who are involved in the process of the evolution of the sport, promoting the upper end of it, potentially even disproportionately. And that's because we're trying to grow the experience, that comfort, that you know, all the things that you want to have with you while you're out fishing that you don't necessarily have to have, okay? And that's just the nature of the beast. It happens in tennis, it happens in golf, it happens in baseball, it happens in, you know what I mean, everything out there. We're not hitting rocks with sticks anymore, and we're not hitting a duck wrapped up in leather and throwing it into a wastebasket playing basketball. So with every sport, there's evolution. But here's the part where the kayak fishing is too expensive part, which is a big consideration when it comes to getting started kayak fishing, comes into play, is kind of silly. And it's also where I'm going to make my play to get you to invest in and to buy a premium American-made kayak where possible. And that's that when these premium kayaks come out and the company develops these new accessories, handles, hatches, pods, seat frames, and all of these things that have to be, that cost has to be recouped and amortized into the price of the boat, that trickles down into these more price point offering boats. This November, I will have been kayak fishing 30 years from actual rotomolded plastic kayaks. I've been fishing out of paddlecraft pretty much my whole life, but there are right now more kayaks under $1,000 than there were when I got started 30 years ago. And that's not adjusted for price inflation. I mean, legitimately, dollar for dollar, there are now more $1,000 kayaks or less than $1,000 kayaks than there were when I got started. In addition to that, this bona fide RS-117 is more advanced than any fishing kayak I owned for probably the first 15, maybe even 20 years that I kayak fished. And the reason for that is a lot of the technology or a lot of the cost in this boat has trickled down from the more expensive boats like the SS-127, the SS-107, the PWR, you know, things like the merger with Big Adventures has brought some of the other stuff over, like seat frame development. When those costs can be amortized into the price of the original boat, when you get to these secondary market boats or these entry-level or gateway boats, you get a better value for the price because a lot of that cost has been recouped. And so I strongly urge you to buy these first generation boats from companies like Big Adventures, Jackson, New Canoe, you know, some of the more premium companies out there, because it helps build that and continue to build that machine where new stuff can come out so that the entry-level stuff can continue to be a great value and a great price point. Now, I will say this. One of the things that Jay touched on is the same in the Bearded Dad Fishing in his 10 things you don't need video, is you don't need to buy a brand new kayak. You really don't. Probably the best way to go about it is to hit Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, some of the bigger kayak fishing groups out there, and to solicit advice from some of the groups out there, like Kayak Fishing Dads, Kayak Fishing Freaks from our buddy Wendell over at Wendell Fishing, and then our community, which is the Kayak Bass Fishing group. If you head over to Facebook and search Kayak Bass Fishing, click on the groups tab, you'll see it. It's the one with over 100,000 members, a very welcoming community, and it's a great place to go ask some of these questions to get feedback. And it's also a place where every now and then you can see some really good deals. So the number one thing I think you should invest in is a PFD. Spend the most on your PFD. Spend kind of your second most on your paddle, because you're going to use those throughout your future in kayak fishing. And then buy the best kayak that you can possibly buy to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And I'm going to finish the video with this. It's kind of funny. I did a guided trip the other day, and I was in the PWR, had the motor on it, and I was towing the guided client in the RS-117. I tow him to the spot, tell him where to cast, we'd catch fish, we'd move on to the next spot. We get back to the boat ramp, and he gets out of the kayak and asks me this question. All right, man, that was awesome. Now, what all do I need to get started kayak fishing? And I'm like, just sit back down. You got it. You got a paddle, you got a PFD, and you got the RS-117. Got a couple flush mount rod holders on it, got a couple of horizontal storage positions on it. It's got everything you need. This boat and boats similar to it, like, you know, say the Jackson Bite, and some other boats in that category, the Perception Outlaw, are all great boats that you can get in that quality price point. And then I'm going to leave you with this. The other thing to consider when you're buying that first boat is think about it as your buddy boat after you buy your second kayak, or think about it like this. If you buy a premium boat first, it's going to hold its value so that then when you decide to sell it to somebody who's in the position you were in 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, a year, year and a half, 2 years ago, you're going to preserve more of the value. So I'm going to leave you with this. If you buy a cheap $250, $300 kayak from Walmart, from Dick's, Academy, somewhere like that, and you get like the cheapest possible boat you can buy, you're going to use it for a year, and then when you try to sell it, you're probably not going to be able to get anything out of it. So it's almost disposable. Whereas if you buy a boat like an RS-117 and you spend, $1,050, $1,100 on it, you use it for a year. At the end of the year, you sell it for $850, $900, potentially even $950 because it preserves its value. You now fish for that whole year for $100. Whereas in that $300 boat, when you lose every bit of it, it costs you $300. So if you take that and you think about it like that, I think you're going to make smarter decisions about getting into kayak fishing. Last thing I'm going to leave you with is there's 2 things that I recommend right out of the gate if you say to yourself, what are the number 1 and number 2 nice to have things if I'm kayak fishing? And I'll just tell you this. This is not a sponsor plug. This is legitimately one of my favorite pieces of gear out there because it is a net that is designed specifically for kayak fishing, because a lot of times we're in the kayak, we were holding our rod with one hand and you got to land the fish. So having that ability to have that leverage, having that grip and having that control over my net to land the fish, especially when you're fishing treble hooks, so you don't want to end up reaching down and getting that treble hook in the hand. So if I was going to say the first nice to have thing would be the leverage landing net. It can go in a flush mount rod holder. It can fold up and store in a small space. It's got a rubberized net. Everything about it's amazing. And then the second thing that I would recommend splurging on is an anchor wizard. The anchor wizard makes managing your boat position, holding position, making pinpoint casts and things like that so much easier, especially if you're in an entry-level kayak that doesn't have a lot of keel, doesn't have a lot of drag because you don't have a pedal drive or a motor kind of helping. So having that little bit of extra drag, having the ability to anchor, and not always even anchoring, just dropping down 6 or 8 inches of anchor line so that your boat doesn't want to spin on you is a very smart second investment. So number 1 thing, PFD. Number 2 thing, paddle. Then obviously pick your fishing kayak. And 2 nice to have things would be the leverage landing net and the anchor wizard from the folks at Anchor Wizard. Those would be the order that I would add them in. Probably after that, I'd look at a crate system, some rod holder type stuff, but realistically, those are the 3 things you need to get into kayak fishing. Some of my thoughts on kind of where we're at in the sport, and my first recommendation for the couple things that you need after you get those first 3. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Do me a favor and comment in the comment section. Please consider joining KBF to help support and grow the community and get back way more than you put into it. Your ambassador membership at $25 is going to get you over $250 in gift certificates from all of our participating sponsors. Yeah, help support the channel, help support us growing the community and giving back. And yeah, thank you in advance, and I will see you guys in the next video. Dude, could you tell how much I was sweating in that video? It's like, I think my freaking hat, oh, look at that, dude. I sweated through this thing in like 8 minutes. It's like I'm over here, I got like a waterfall running down my butt crack. I probably shouldn't have took a shower like right before I came out here in the heat, but man. I was sweating like a Biden supporter at a Trump rally. Good God. Hey guys, I'm Chad Hoover with Kayak Bass Fishing. If you're looking to get in on the exciting sport of kayak fishing yourself, check out kayakbassfishing.com. Yeah! Boom! Oh yes! What a freaking code. So whether you want to find out more about competitive kayak fishing and kayak fishing tournaments, or just looking to learn more to make yourself a better angler, head over to kayakbassfishing.com and join today.